Well, it's the second week of LCS with coverage brought to you by Anlimer. I'm joined right now by Guilhoto from Immortals, head coach, to talk about how things went day two. So, Guilhoto, we just started. You said that you are pissed off right now. Maybe you can let me know why.
Uh, I don't know, cause we're just like making so many dumb shit early on when things are communicating, and it seems like the audio issues weren't solved. They were, but for some players, apparently it just wasn't, and they know what's gonna happen, what's happening, what's going to happen, and then we still fall for this stupid stuff. So those are the things that piss me off. Because if one player, or if we play bad, or if we draft bad like yesterday, then it's like it's easier to cope. If it's just we straight up ignore what's being said in comms, then that's gonna piss me off.
Yeah. And so that's what you think is happening is there's just like
No,
really
this
big.
game, that's what happened. Yesterday it wasn't. Yesterday it was just our draft was just very bad. Today is just today was that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
The information was there, and either people listened and they didn't um, react to the information that was there, or they just straight up ignored it.
Well, originally I was hoping to have this be a fun interview where you talk a little bit about the changes, the roster changes that you made this week, and sort of what caused that. But perhaps we can still touch on that a bit, even if
Yeah.
today's results weren't what you wanted. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the philosophy here, because I think a lot of people in the situation of Immortals, like, oh, you guys are trying to make sure that you get this top eight, that you learn, that you advance, so you can get there. They'd be hesitant to make these roster changes in the very beginning of Summer Split, especially when the record carries over. So, what was it that made you feel confident enough that you could do something like that?
Um, so for me, it's part of the whole project. Of course, that for the team itself or for the five, there's no real benefit per se to do this kind of stuff. But I really believe that there needs to be a shift from the uh, making roster changes because the LCS player is playing bad, to just once we have so many games like we have now, to just reward if academy players are doing well. And last split, Pretty did a very good split in academy. So even before the calendar was out, um, we just made a decision that depending on how scrims were going with him, we would give him or not a game on the second week of LCS. It was already prearranged that it would be on the second week of LCS. I think we were careful enough to make sure that it was not a surprise to either Pretty or Insanity that this would happen. Or at least I talked to both very carefully about what my ideas were, and I was always just straight up honest with both of them. And that's why, for example, now Pretty knows that um, him getting a game would not be, even if he would just 1v9 the game and 10-0, it would not be what would give him the LCS spot. And David knew exactly the same. Regardless of how Pretty would do, he would not lose the spot. Um, so yeah, I mean, we and I still really believe in that the reward system works, and it's something that I want to continue doing moving forward. The main difference, I think, from most roster swaps and ours is just our goal is to reward the academy player with a game on stage, and most roster swaps are just player is playing bad or having attitude issues or whatnot. So we just put the other guy. For me, it's just, of course, you kind of have to do it. It just feels like you're kind of taking the merit of the academy player to reach there. It's more, and then you just create kind of a culture where the academy players are just rooting for the LCS player on his role to just fuck up or do poorly. And we want to have a very close academy and an LCS atmosphere.
So, I think what's interesting to me about this philosophy is you mentioned, like, okay, a lot of teams, it's a matter, they're just waiting for if the LCS player has some big issue, either performance, personal, or both, in order to drop it. But you don't mention it. It's like it is you're mentioning it more as a reward rather than if the other player on the academy team has some incredible performance and they kind of like earn getting into that spot and kind of a longer term thing. It feels almost like it's like a junior high or high school type thing. It's like, oh, we're gonna grant you this gift, like you've unlocked the star for this week, so now you get in, rather than like, hey, you're playing well, we believe in you, we think you should start. And so I'm kind of curious why it is that you make that delineation where it's more of like a reward system rather than like you've earned that spot, now you get to play in this for like a longer period of time.
For me, I mean, playing for a longer period of time, I feel like mm, how do I explain this? Making I really believe that making a change should be something done during the off season. So if we were to make something permanent, it would be during the off season. I think during the season, um, the issue has to be, or it's the reason why we would make a roster change would be because the guy that is there is having an issues or is for sure performing worse than the academy. And of course, that if that happens, then we'll obviously make a change. But in this case, that's not what happened. It's Pretty is not performing better than Insanity. I don't feel that right now that the players that we have in academy are necessarily performing better than the player in the LCS.
LCS, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that should be a factor to stop me from giving a game if their performance is good. And then once we go during the off season, then that's the time to adjust and to have also this LCS game sample size to define with what pieces we want to move forward going into next year. So to answer more directly to your question, for me it's more you disrupt a lot of team by making a roster change if it's due to the academy player is performing exceptionally well. And I think that um, not connecting both is almost impossible between the academy players performing very well and the LCS player is just performing poorly. And I just want, for me, the main thing is I just want to avoid when both players are performing at a similar level, or if the academy player is performing really well, but the LCS player is just performing even better. I don't want that to be a stoppage from the academy player to get a game that he's still deserving. He's still like, think about it as traditional sports, right? The guy that is putting a lot of effort into practice and showing a lot of good things, but is still not in a position to take the role of like the star player or the 5-man starter. It doesn't mean that he shouldn't get minutes in the game.
Yeah.
Right? It just means that he's not on the starter position, but his hard work should still be acknowledged. And what we find is that the best way to acknowledge hard work and good performances in academy is to reward them with an LCS game.
I mean, it's interesting too because it sounds like you're feeling them in scrims as well. So I
Yeah.
wonder if you think, is that also part of the reward? Is it also a situation where like does that impact? Obviously the rest of the roster gets impacted by the fact that they're playing with like a sub for those scrims. I don't know if there's any concern that that's like a detriment towards the team in any way.
I mean, it's most of the practice that we did with Pretty were during the off season, and then he played the last or the first game during this week every day. So he played 3 games this week and probably around like 10, I would say, during the off season.
Yeah.
Um, if it is a detrimental or not, I mean, of course it is, but there are so many other reasons why a game of scrims can be useless. Either it's like, I don't know, an invade and it's a remake or a GG, or the game ends at 10 minutes, or I don't know, someone is just straight up trolling. Like that, for me, thinking that putting Pretty in a scrim will be the reason why our practice going into the week will be worse. It just seems kind of like not necessarily realistic.
Yeah.
Um, of course, that like having Insanity in all games of scrims improves the consistency of practice, and that's why we always try to, and we always did, have Pretty do either the first or the last, so that Insanity also has 4 games in a row, instead of like putting him on the second or third and then just swapping it back.
Yeah. Well, Guilhoto, we're over time, so I have to say goodbye to you. I'm sorry, but thanks so much for doing the interview. Sorry that the game didn't go the way you wanted it today, but I do appreciate you taking the time. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things LCS right here on my YouTube channel. Oh my gosh, summer split. You know what that means? It's summer. And you might be thinking to yourself, time to go outside and enjoy the sun, enjoy the wilderness, go climb a mountain. No, that stuff is dangerous. You know what's safe? Alienware computers and playing games on them, including, by the way, their new X Series line of notebooks, which you can go check out at alienware.com/Travis. There's a link in the description below. Be safe. Play video games. It's the way to live. That's how I live. And I'm still alive, so clearly it's working.